No, I'm just that I'm super stoked to be here with you guys today.
Thank you. All right, so let's get started with one of the kind of baseline questions we wanted to ask. What are some of the key elements that you think form the foundation of a fabulous UX designer?
So I think I have covered that part in the presentation, but like if I'm being honest, there are two traits that a UX designer should have. One is that the person should be really good at communication, that he or she or anyone else, they need to listen properly and understand the other person, the problem they're trying to solve. And next is, second one is they should have a bit of common sense. That's the basic prerequisite that you gotta have to begin designing, more or less. Tools and all can come later on.
Yeah, I like that. I like that common sense is one of the basics. Just kind of putting yourself in the other person's shoes, you mean, or like walking through the stuff yourself.
Yep.
Okay, nice. All right, so let's talk about how your interest in psychology kind of meshes up with this. You think that we can use the principles of psychology to enhance the effectiveness of UX design. How do you think we could apply the principles to do this?
Okay, so when I said that communication is a major aspect of being a great UX designer, so on a day-to-day activity, when you are trying to communicate with the other person, like we are also trying to understand what the person is saying and specifically what the person is not saying. Like most of the times, our words are different, but what our intentions are, it's a bit different as well. And as human beings, we do have certain level of biases. Even we don't realize, like our subconscious brain just like will do something, even if we consciously make a decision. Okay, I'm not gonna eat that junk meal, but suddenly it's my habit that I'm gonna eat that junk meal again. So in order for me to create a better experience for you, I need to understand how you think and what's your general psychology is like, so that it's not one shoe fits all. I need to know you as a person, and which is where, like, even in understanding, psychology plays a major role.
Very good. I
Uh,
know that
yeah,
you have a presentation you wanted to give us, so I'm going to step back from the stage and then we'll dive in on questions when you're all finished.
sure.
But take it away.
All right. Thanks a lot. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, looks good.
All right. So yeah, the topic for today is UX design demystified, unveiling the secrets behind great experiences. All right, let's start. So there are a few disclaimers before I'd like to begin. So since the world of UX is quite vast, and this journey won't be like a crash course like for landing a high-paying job or understanding that you learn everything. So my intention is that for you to get a basic understanding, like from a fundamental level, so that you can kickstart your journey as you go along. This is a bigger, beginner-friendly experience. We won't dive much deeper into technicalities and jargons. Our mission will be for you to better understand the world of UX and how do you take your first step forward. All right, let's get started then. Hello, I'm Pragyan and I'll be your guide for today. About me, I'm actually a mechanical engineer by education who was somehow lured into this amazing world of the UX and never really left after that. And today, my goal would be to make you familiar with this amazing world of UX and somehow make you join this supposed cult. Then, without further ado, let's begin. All right. So, what exactly is UX design? UX design, by definition, stands for user experience design. So, in order to understand it from a, say, first principle basis, let's break it down into its components. We've got user, we've got experience, and we've got design. So, what exactly is an experience? So, if you think about it, an experience is the way we get to understand the world we live in. Like anything that we are doing in this world is a form of experience, and it's the actual currency on which the world is operating. Whatever you do, it's always the experience that you're chasing, right? Then, and you, so if the five, think of the five senses like an input. You are processing the word through your five sense organs, and these are the input, and then your brain sort of amalgamizes all these inputs, and the net outcome is what we call an experience. We all crave for good experiences, but a great experience is something that stimulates all five senses. Okay, let it, let me ask you, if you compare all the experiences that you have, uh, like when you're operating your mobile device, when say you are going on a walk, or when you are eating, or when you are just on your phone. So if you think about when you are eating, eating is a activity that contains all the five senses. You've got taste, you've got smell, you've got the feel, and you can visually see it. And like say if you're slurping, then you can hear it as well. So the idea is any great design is some will always stimulate all the five senses that you have. So now once we have a rough understanding of what an experience is, let's try and understand who a user is. A user is a person for whom you are trying to create an experience. Okay. Then a user can be logically anyone and everyone. A user can dynamically change depending on your frame of reference. So, what this particular sentence means is uh, whether you are working somewhere or whatever your title is. So, think of it from this perspective. I will take it. So, if I am a designer, I'm trying to create a product for a user. So directly the end user is the person who is going to use my product. But if I change my frame of reference before I create that product and push it to that user, I need to interact with the people who are around me. So say, for example, a developer. So now when I'm creating designs for the developer to code, I also need to understand what kind of requirements that developer also would need from me. Like what are the handoffs he'd require? What are the specification he or she would require? So in this scenario, that developer would become my user because his requirements is the kind of design I am providing. And similarly, your frame of reference can always change no matter where you go. A user is not always defined. On that basis, anyone and everyone can be user. Even you can be a user for yourself if you're trying to uh, like say set up a timetable for yourself. You need to understand what your requirements are. You're creating a plan for yourself. Here you will be a user. Then moving on, what exactly is a design? To put it simply, design is nothing but solving problems within constraints. Okay, that sounds like a terrible oversimplification. By that logic, shouldn't all of us be designers? Like if it's just solving problems within constraint. And in reality, yes, we all are designers. Like if you think about it, from all the way to the caves and the moon, we've always been driven to make our lives better and experiences better. And that's what we have done so far. Like we took a problem, we tried to understand it, we tried to solve it. And by doing so, we have made our lives better. So no matter what your profession is, uh, what kind of job you have, what's your age group, it doesn't really matter. You're already a UX designer to begin with. Now, a UX designer would be a person driven to solve problems to enhance the experiences of a user. So, since the fact that we have established that we are already UX designer, what are we even doing here? The question is, how do we make sure that we are a good or better or great designer? So, our next journey will be about that. Glad you asked. And now we'll move on to the next phase of our journey. Making of a great designer. Here are certain prerequisites to be a great designer. I think I've already addressed this, but in order to be a great designer, you need to have these two traits. One is common sense, and another is communication. I know you guys must be thinking like common sense and communication, that's like way too vague. And am I not going to talk about fancy tools like Sigma or generative AI, or what about user research or usability testing? I know it feels a bit off, but allow me to explain you with a story. All right, it's a story time. So this story is called A Ketchup's Guide to Design. Heinz, if you know, Heinz is a tomato ketchup company. Heinz introduced tomato ketchup to its product range in 1876, and for over a century, they never changed their packaging design. It was always that glass bottle design. Only some small refinements were done to the design throughout the years. Then one day they decided to conduct user research to track user satisfaction for their product. So they went to different houses, spoke to different family, and which is when they realized they had a major insight, and that was the glass bottle was only handled by adults at home, and a typical 5-year-old consumes over 60% more ketchup than a 40-year-old. Like, so if a kid wanted to have ketchup with his or her fries, then it's like they have to go to their parents and ask them to pour the ketchup bottle. They can't handle themselves. So ideally, what they have been doing, they didn't even realize who their original customer or consumer was, which is when they tried to make amends for it. Another issue was that the lack of control over the quantity of ketchup coming out of the bottle. So, the viscosity of that bottle is quite thick. So, if you like trying to pour that bottle, you are unable to control it. So, these were now two challenges which they encountered after actually communicating with the family members. Had they been just carrying around with what they have done for the past century, they wouldn't have made the discovery. So, for the solution, the packaging team focused on solving this problem and increasing usability. So, what they came up with was an easy squirt bottle made out of soft plastic with a conical nozzle, which you guys have now seen in most of the restaurants. So, this surprisingly increased their consumption by 12% because now, since it's not a fragile thing, it can be handled by kids. So, they definitely solved one problem that even kids could use it. But after that, they still reiterated it, again conducted user research, asked whether their product was performing better or not. Later, they found the amount of ketchup was still uncontrollable. So initially, we started with two problem statement where we had to create a product which the actual consumers could use. Second, to control the amount of ketchup that you want on your plate. So in order to solve this, they came up with another solution. And the final result was they turned their took this inside and turned the problem literally upside down. The upside down ketchup bottle was born. So directly you keep it downwards and it's easy to squeeze because the of the gravity, the ketchup is already coming down. It helped consumers get the product quicker and make lesser mess at the opening. Now, the same design is used in packaging of all the viscous products, be it ketchup, honey, or shampoo. So, here's another thing like when you're trying to solve a problem, first of all, we've established communication is important, and where common sense work is. Uh, Take example of the shampoo company or the honey company. They could have done and repeated the same experiment over and over again, only to realize that the end result would be similar to what the ketchup company did. This is where the common sense comes in. First, you need to identify the problem that you're trying to solve. Is it already existing in the world? Has someone already come up with a similar solution? Because doing the same process over and over again, which has already been done, will only waste your resource and waste your energy. So, which is why another concept of common sense applies here that they took direct inspiration. Okay, this works for all viscous liquids. So, technically, all viscous products should have similar design. Interesting, right? The solution was so simple. All the design are simple in nature. All good designs are meant to be simple in nature. And simplicity can only be achieved when you fully understand the actual problem. Like there could be a solution where someone would try to tell you a problem statement. Your job would be to keep on asking questions until unless you can fundamentally break down that question into its smallest atom, that it can't be further broken down. What's the actual underlying problem that is causing the issue? Then, which is done by proper communication between you and the user you are trying to help. Once you have simplified the problem, you need common sense to avoid overcomplicating the solution. I know that even it's like a bias or something, but most of the time we think that a complex solution is generally a better one. But most of the time, it's not. So if you have taken the effort to simplify the problem, don't waste that energy to overcomplicate the solution. Right. Apart from this, there are few processes that are required in your journey to craft great digital experiences. Here's a quick overview on that. User research. So user research is something that you can already take, uh, can understand from the previous story, that it's to understand the actual problem, go and talk to people, see what the actual problem is, and it involves techniques like interviews, testing, helping design to learn their needs and preferences. It helps designer to create a better user experience. This is where psychology also kicks in. That there are certain level of biases that we have. I think there are probably more than 21 biases that we have, which we need to factor into account. Most of the time, a common thing would be that if you take a survey poll, for example, a user or a person might take on something, but they'll do something completely different. A classical example is that in an Apple showroom, they gathered a bunch of people and they introduced their newly launched iPhones in their different skins. And they asked which one did the users feel like was a better color. So most of the people said, yeah, the blue color is better. Then after that, they asked the user, well, after they were leaving the showroom, they can collect the iPhone of their preferences. And to the surprise, what they observed was most majority of the users took the phone with the black skin, which clearly indicates what people say and what people do is completely different, which is where user research plays a lot uh, into the picture. Then next is wireframing and prototyping. So this is something that we usually do when we are crafting a digital product, or and it's also done for physical product as well. The goal is to create some rough model before you actually spend time into building the actual product, to get an understanding how it will be made, whether it's actually serving the exact purpose you are trying to achieve. So it's a visual blueprint that outlines the basic structure and layout of the digital product for interface. And it really helps us designer to plan and organize how should we handle things in the future. Yeah. Prototyping, it involves creating interactive, testable versions of a design. So before you actually launch a product, or prototype is something like a dummy model that you showcase to the people, see how they are actually interacting with it. Is it something similar to what you would expect? If not, then you would go back and make an iterative model. It's something similar to what uh, these guys also did in between in the experiment. So the goal is that you make a prototype, go to the people, ask them to interact with it, and see how they are reacting and gather their feedback, and then refine the product. The process is all about communication, reiteration until unless you hit the spot. Then visual design. So it's all about making things uh, look aesthetically good. There's a concept called aesthetic usability effect. So what it states that is something that looks good gives a perception of better usability. A general example would be that if a website is aesthetically good looking, you would stay on the website relatively for a longer duration in comparison to something that looks bad. So it's visual design is always like a cherry on the top. So you start with usability and then you proceed towards the external look of things. And it usually contains concepts of color theory, shapes, typography, etc., etc. Then we come to interaction design. Interaction designs are how things look on a screen, how device work, the sound of a button when you tap onto it. It focuses on making sure the button menus on other elements respond in a way that feels natural. It's intuitive. It so there's a saying that a good design is something that's not noticeable because it is so intuitive that you hardly notice it. But if you remove it from the experience, the complete experience falls off. So, and lastly, you've got usability testing. Testing is pretty much what you do with the prototype or after you've created the final product. So, like in the Heinz ketchup experiment, once they created the nozzle bottle, after gathering the feedback, they went back to the users again to see how they responded, only to realize that they've only solved one problem and the second problem still remains. And they came back and iterated on that product to solve for both the problems that they initially recognized. And lastly, there's accessibility. Accessibility helps ensure that websites, apps, and other designs are built in a way that everyone can access it and use them, including people with visual hearing, mobility, and cognitive impairment. We need to realize that because we don't have any so uh, sort of difficulties or physical uh, impairments, other people also other people might also not have that. But in reality, we need to create an experience that everyone in this world could enjoy, which is why accessibility is truly the heart of a great UX design.
Absolutely,
But
Pragyan. I'm so sorry. I am gonna have to cut you off. I really
yeah,
apologize.
yeah,
But this
I'm
has been
already
wonderful.
done. Yeah, I'm already done.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you again so much for your time and your expertise. It was really, really wonderful getting to learn all about all of this from you. Thank you so much.
all right. Thank you.